Welcome to It's All Geek to Me, a podcast where two friends experience popular nerdy franchises for the first time. My name is Leah, and this season my co-host Kelli and I will be traveling to a galaxy far, far away as Kelli experiences Star Wars for the very first time. And I'm the expert. Let's dive in.
And we are back for what could be the most exciting movie of the prequel trilogy.
Ooh.
Episode 3, The Comeuppance of the Sith.
Yes, the comeuppance. We're ready to get comeuppance.
Oh, boy.
For anyone confused, it's actually called Revenge of the Sith, but, we're taking our own creative approach to this film.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I think it must have been episode 1, I guessed what the next episode was going to be called, and I was pretty darn close.
Honestly, I was impressed with that.
Thank you. Well, anyway, we started the movie today and a lot happened. So
I also want to give you context as well, because obviously between episodes 1 and episode 2, there was a time jump of 10 years. In between episodes 2 and 3, there's a time jump of 3 years. So a little bit has happened, like Obi and Anakin have a different sort of rapport. Anakin's grown his hair out, nice and luscious.
Oh boy.
Him and Padmé have been married for some time now.
Yikes.
So that's where we are starting off this film.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that definitely makes a lot of sense because I was thinking a lot has happened since the last movie. But yeah, okay. I get it. So let's dive into what happens. First, with our opening crawl, we get a little bit of information, which I have to say, I loved that the first thing, it was just war! Exclamation point. So it says that the Republic is crumbling because Count Dooku has been attacking. And then we also learn that the droid leader, General Grievous, has kidnapped Chancellor Palpatine, now the Jedi are on a mission to rescue him.
Starting off with a battle right away.
And immediately my eyes just glazed over.
I knew it would, yeah.
So I didn't write too much detail about what happens during this scene, but basically there is a Star War.
A war among the stars.
That's all I wrote. No, I'm just kidding. So we have these two little ships. Obi and Anakin are in them, and they're, coordinating attacks, trying to get this separationist droid army to relinquish the Chancellor, I guess.
Yeah.
And Anakin is definitely enjoying himself because he's like, this is the fun part.
Yeah.
And Obi is definitely not enjoying himself because at one part he's like, this is not for me or something like that.
No, he doesn't like flying at all, but Anakin, we know, is a very seasoned pilot back in his pod racing days.
He loves pod racing.
He loves to fly. Yep.
So I don't know how important this is to the detail of the story, but I think it just basically highlights how much Anakin doesn't fully listen to Obi.
Yeah.
Because at one point Obi gets hit and he's covered by what are called buzz droids, and they're shutting his ship down, and Anakin is like, oh, I'll help you. And Obi's like, no, stick to the mission, get to the Chancellor. But Anakin's like, no, I'll help. So he starts shooting at the ship. That's not working. He starts knocking into it to knock the little buzz droids off, and one of them gets onto his ship, but he's got R2-D2 there, so he shoots and disables the little droid, and it flies off.
And I think it's less of a question at this point of, does Anakin listen to Obi-Wan? I think it's more about Anakin's connection to Obi-Wan and his need to help him, because I think in the second film, for sure, there was a lot of Anakin disobeying Obi-Wan, but I think here he does listen to him a little bit more. Like, before Anakin helps Obi-Wan in this sequence, there was another part where some of the clones were getting attacked, and Anakin was gonna leave to go help the clones, and Obi said, don't help them, they're doing their job so we can do our job. And Anakin said, okay, I'll help you. But I think he holds Obi in a little bit more of a higher regard, and he's not just gonna leave him to be space dust when he can save him, because he needs him for this mission,
Very true, very true.
I think their bond is a little bit more apparent in this film than it has been previously.
Yeah. Although one thing I noticed, at least in this section, is Anakin keeps on trying to be the hero. And I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah. But I think that Obi is allowing that.
I agree. I actually do agree. I think that Obi is not being the best master to him. And that's honestly potentially why Anakin's so attached.
Yeah. I think that the lines between Master and Padawan are very blurred in this film. And they feel more like colleagues on the same level rather than there being a power difference. difference between them.
Absolutely. Well, anyway, so they get onto, I don't even know if they called it anything, but it was basically just the main ship that the Chancellor was being held hostage on.
Yeah, just the ship.
And they actually had a really cool moment. They kind of crash landed on their little fighter jet things.
I like that.
And Obi jumps out with his lightsaber and immediately starts attacking. Very cool. So then R2-D2 finds the Chancellor, and it seems that he is at the observation deck, and they're like, it's a trap, but we're gonna set it off anyway because that's how we get him.
What else can we do? Yeah.
And then Obi tells R2 to stay with the ship. So then meanwhile, we meet General Grievous, and he is a big coughing droid guy, which I have so many questions.
Why is he coughing? I don't know.
Why is he coughing? He's a droid. Can't they just fix him?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know why a droid should ever be coughing.
Especially if he's the leader of the droid army. Shouldn't he have access to droid parts and materials that could potentially, like, he's almost represented as like this old guy in droid form.
Literally, I don't think that much thought went into that because, yeah, literally makes no sense.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that we're all clear on the bad writing.
I was waiting for you to do it.
So he asks the captain what's going on, and it is one of the sad alien face guys, which love them. They're incredible.
Sad fish man, yeah.
And he says that there are 2 Jedi in the main hangar bay, just as Dooku predicted. So they're keeping an eye on them.
So it was a trap.
So it totally is a trap. So we see the Jedi, they're fighting off some more destroyers. They get into an elevator. It's actually filled with battle droids, and they cut them down. So it's just, I don't know, like it almost felt like comedic relief.
Yeah. I think the whole elevator sequence is weird comedic relief. Like it went on for way too long. Way longer than it needed to.
So anyway, they're going up the elevator, and at one point the elevator stops, and Anakin immediately is like, I know how to fix this. So he just carves a hole in the ceiling, and
No
Obi's
patience.
like, there's another way we can fix this. And he calms R2, and he's like, can you get the elevator to start working again? And R2 is actually hiding from a couple of droids that got to their little fighter jets, and Anakin jumps out, and he manages to jump out at the same moment that R2 sets the elevator to go down. So he's kind of just hanging on to the little like elevator opening thing. And then we actually get kind of a funny moment where these 2 droids are looking down and they're like, hands up, Jedi, which I'm like, how does that make sense? If he lifts his hands, he falls.
Yeah.
So then Obi is like falling down in this elevator, and he's like, no, R2, we need to go up, not down. And then I was like, okay, so that's what's going to happen. It's going to go back up, and then Anakin's going to jump back in. It's going to kill the droids, which is exactly what happened. And then we also see very casually R2-D2 just annihilates the 2 droids that he was hiding from.
And then there's this funny conversation in the elevator where Obi-Wan is sort of talking down on R2, and Anakin stops him and sort of defends R2 and says, don't talk about my friend that way. He's a good droid. And he is a good droid because he blew up those other droids.
And then we just see him casually walking away from
his destruction.
The burning droids that he murdered savagely.
So great.
So then the Jedi finally get to the observation deck, and Palpatine is strapped to a chair, and they go up to him. They ask if he's okay, and he's like, Dooku. And then they turn around. Count Dooku's there. He does this hilarious flip onto the ground because he's like on a little balcony thing. And Obi is like, this time we fight him together. And Anakin's like, I was just about to say that, which is so annoying, but whatever.
Yeah, but I also think it shows his growth a little bit.
Yeah.
He's not as insufferable in this film as he was.
No, I agree. And I think a lot of it is because his hair is not as annoying.
Yeah.
He looks a lot better.
And I think that, well, I mean, we'll get to it more when we see Padmé, but I think that his chemistry with Padmé is a lot more believable in this film than it was in the last film.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
But we'll get there.
So anyway, Palpatine is like, you need to get help. He's a Sith Lord. And Obi is like, well, Sith Lords are actually our specialty.
But is he a Sith Lord?
I don't know. I assumed he was a Lord.
Well, they said in the last film that every time there's a Sith Lord, there's also an apprentice.
Well, we all know Palpatine is the Sith Lord.
So maybe the Jedi are going to be a little off the mark on this one, thinking that Dooku is a Lord when he's actually an apprentice. apprentice.
Well, if he's just an apprentice, he's a pretty strong one.
Yeah, he
but
is.
Anyway, Obi says Sith Lords are their specialty, and then they pull off their robes. And I wanted to note that Obi is in this like off-white color, and Anakin is in black.
Yeah.
And they pull out their lightsabers. And this was actually the first time, you mentioned it in our last episode, that the bad guys always have the red lightsabers and the good guys always have the blue. This is the first time I noticed.
Well, yep.
But yeah, so they start fighting, and Dooku is like, he's saying he's excited for it. And Anakin is like, my powers have actually doubled since the last time we fought. And Dooku is like, that's great. Twice the pride, double the fall, which I liked.
Yeah.
So they're fighting him off. Dooku uses his Jedi powers to throw Obi like across the room and then traps him under this little ledge.
Yeah.
Which I thought was going to be a lot more severe at the time. I thought that he was going to be crushing his legs, but no, he just wanted to very, very slightly incapacitate him instead of kill him, which he should have done, but you know, it's a movie, so you can't do that.
Yeah, we know when Obi dies, and it's not yet.
But I was like, wait, I don't remember him having some leg problem, but yeah, no.
He doesn't.
They barely touch him. So then Anakin starts fighting Dooku, and honestly, holding his own really well. And then the most exciting part of this section happens, which is that Anakin cuts off both of Dooku's hands.
Ooh.
So I'm counting that as 2.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, so we're at 4 now.
Well, I do have to say, so far in all of Star Wars, everyone is so incredibly casual about getting their hands removed.
Yeah.
It's actually wild.
But they do have the technology. They've got like pretty good technology to like give them better hands.
I mean, I feel like we also have technology for that, but if I just casually lost a hand, I feel like, well, first of all, I'd be screaming.
Yeah.
You know, that's the first thing. So yeah, I don't know, but he's just very casual about it.
But no, it didn't seem like it hurt him at all.
But then Anakin actually catches his lightsaber, and we have one of the coolest shots, in my opinion.
It was
and
pretty cool.
That is Anakin crossing the lightsabers and basically holding them around Dooku's head, almost like a scissor.
Yeah.
And Palpatine is like, ooh, good job. Now kill him. And Anakin is like, I probably shouldn't. And Palpatine is like, kill him now. Do it.
Scary.
Very evil. Very obviously
Oh,
evil.
yeah.
And then Anakin does it without much hesitation. And then Palpatine is like, good job. He was too dangerous to keep alive. And Anakin has another moment. He keeps on having these moments where he's evil, and then he's like, I probably shouldn't have done that because I'm a Jedi.
Yeah.
And that's basically what happens. He's like, this isn't the Jedi way. He was an unarmed prisoner. And I was like, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally unarmed. Well, unhanded.
Unhanded, yeah.
And then Palpatine is like, well, it's only fair. He cut off your arm and you wanted revenge. And I was thinking, first of all, I feel like he got his revenge when he cut off his hands.
Yeah.
I think that's revenge enough. But then he's like, remember, this isn't the first time you got revenge. You also did it after your mom was killed, which I thought was a pretty low blow.
But also interesting that Anakin confided it in Palpatine, because I doubt he told Obi-Wan about that.
Yeah, I do think that was a little interesting. And I think it also gives us a hint as to how strong the relationship is between Anakin and Palpatine, who will soon be his Sith Lord Master.
Maybe.
I know it. I know it to be true.
You searched your feelings.
So then they start leaving, and Anakin goes to Obi, and Palpatine is like, no, just leave him behind. It's totally fine. And Anakin is like, well, he's totally fine. He's just unconscious.
Palpatine is not even hiding his evilness here.
No, not at all. He's just like, come on, leave him. We gotta go. And then Anakin is like, he will share the same fate as us.
I like that line. Yeah.
Palpatine is like, all right, I guess he has to come with us. So then we have Grievous and the alien guy. They're preparing for attack. They start firing in their little command center thing. And this is kind of intercut with Anakin calling for R2 to get them on the elevator. And the ship kind of starts failing.
Yeah.
I guess it's being shot at by other entities.
And a little fun fact that in this little sequence, when the ship starts failing and the droids start kind of going all over the place, we do hear the famous Wilhelm scream.
Do we? Oh, I don't know why I just can't pick it up like you can.
Honestly, because I watched like a 10-minute video of a compilation of every time it's been used in a film, and it was seared into my brain after that.
Wow. Maybe I should watch that next.
Don't recommend.
Oh, okay. So with the ship failing, it kind of starts falling, I guess, towards the planet, which I forget the name of the planet.
Coruscant.
Yeah, so it starts falling towards Coruscant, but Grievous is like, fire the emergency boosters. And meanwhile, the Jedi and Palpatine are sliding down this elevator bay, and Anakin grabs onto something. Obi is passed out, but he wakes up pretty quick and he clings clings on because he's
funny.
like, all right, I'm about to die.
He's like, did I miss something?
And then Palpatine grabs onto, I think, one of their legs.
Yeah.
And then I guess R2 sent the elevator to come, but at this point, it's about to crush them. So then Anakin is like, oh, I'll tell him to stop it. And Obi's like, there's no time. We gotta go. And then they fall, and Anakin has a very convenient grappling hook that lands them exactly where they need to be.
Perfect. We love the grappling hooks.
Into another little elevator bay. So then Grievous, he says he knows where the Jedi are, and he's gonna activate a ray shield, which just basically completely surrounds them in this little hallway that they're in.
Yeah.
And Anakin is like, I suggest being patient. And Obi is like, why? And he's like, well, R2 is gonna come save us in a minute, so it'll be totally fine.
Whenever he says patience, this particular line, I roll my eyes because I'm like, what was Obi telling you not 10 minutes ago in the elevator when you're cutting a hole in the center of it, dude?
Yeah.
Patience.
Yeah, and now he's just acting like a little know-it-all with his, oh, patience is important for a Jedi. No, not always.
Yeah.
So then R2 comes flying in, and I don't really understand why he's acting like such a doofus, but he like comes in, he smacks into the wall, he's like rustling around, and then all these droids surround them, and they're like, no.
He may have been malfunctioning a little bit because he took like a giant fall earlier, and he's being chased by this army, so it could be one of those reasons.
Fair. And we get a little snarky line from Obi, and he's like, did you have a plan B? Before we cut to them being brought to General Grievous. And he's coughing as per usual, because it's very normal for a droid to just be coughing. And he's like, oh, the negotiator, which I feel like the camera gave us a little fake out because it was showing Anakin, and he was like, ah, the negotiator. And then Anakin moves aside, and he's like, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Did you notice that? I don't know. I thought
didn't.
It was weird.
I might have been writing a note at that point.
Yeah, I don't think it was like intentional, but I just thought it was super weird. And then he's like, and Anakin Skywalker, I thought that somebody with your reputation would be a little bit older. And Anakin is like, General Grievous, I thought you would be taller.
Which he's so tall.
Which is so savage.
But he's so tall, so how much taller could he be?
I don't know. And Grievous also just casually calls him Jedi scum, and Obi is like, don't upset him. But then he immediately starts like being snarky at him, so I don't know why he said that. So Grievous takes their lightsabers, and he's like, this will be a fine addition to my collection. But then I guess Obi just uses the Force to get them back?
Yeah, like R2 causes some weird distraction. Obi turns around, uses the Force.
Too easy.
Wait, it was like the original trilogy when Han Solo does like the shoulder tap fake out. Taps
so
him on the
dumb.
shoulder.
So dumb. I'm still offended.
It's giving that vibe, yeah.
Yeah. So they start fighting again. Palpatine is grabbed by a couple of droids, but Anakin cuts them down. Although I felt that they were being very delicate with him because they probably know that he is their true master. And then the Jedi finally corner Grievous, and he's like, you lose, Kenobi. And then he throws this weapon at one of the windows, and it sucks him out, and it almost sucks out the Jedi too. But he also uses like a little grappling hook to get back, I guess, into one of the escape pods. So he does that, and he's like, hey, time to abandon ship, which I love when people are by themselves and explain to the audience their plan.
Yeah, because he's just talking to himself.
Time for me to activate all of the escape pods so that they have no way out.
I said to no one in particular.
Like, ridiculous. So then Anakin has to land the failing ship, and at one point it actually cracks in half, and Obi's like, oh, no worries, we still have half a ship we can pilot.
I thought that was funny. Obi was so silly in this section. I just love him.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm still, I don't know, a little indifferent to him. I guess I partially blame him for how Anakin is turning out.
I think that that's a fair assumption, and I have really never looked at it that way before. And I like that you're opening my eyes to these things.
Thank you. Hopefully I'm opening our audience's eyes too.
Yeah, it kind of is Obi's fault.
Or they're like, why does Kelli hate Obi so much?
No, it's fair to blame him. It totally is.
So they're kind of flying / crash landing into Coruscant, and there's also these fire ships that are watering them because the ship is also on fire as it goes into the atmosphere. But they do manage to do a crash landing, although they take out like one of those little towers, ship tower things. And I'm like, I hope nobody was on that. It's just casual destruction of property and potential death.
Just in a day's work.
It's probably fine though.
Yeah, I'm sure it's okay.
So they get to the Senate and they get out of the ship, and Anakin turns around. Obi's still standing on the ship and he's like, are you coming? And Obi's like, nah, I'm not brave enough for politics, but you go. You be the poster boy. I got to report to the council. And then they get into like a little playful argument where Anakin is like, well, actually, I should say, there's one part where Anakin is like, now hold on, this whole operation was your idea, which is a GIF reaction that I see a lot.
Hey, look at that.
And that is not the only one in this section, I have to tell you.
Amazing. I bet there'll be more.
So they have this little playful argument where Anakin is like, everything I did was because of your training. And Obi's like, no, I was unconscious for all of it. You saved everything and killed Count Dooku. So you go enjoy being a hero. I'm going to do that. We'll catch up later.
And I also like he said, now that's 10 times I've saved you, which I think when first hearing that, you think it's an over exaggeration. I've saved you 10 times. He's just sort of generalizing. But then Obi says, hey, no, it was 9. That one doesn't count. So he wasn't really exaggerating. He does save Obi a lot.
Which is impressive. So then we see good guy Windu, my pal.
I love Windu in this movie.
And he approaches Palpatine, and Palpatine explains that the Jedi killed Dooku, but Grievous is still alive, and Windu is like, yeah, he's a coward. He's gonna run and hide. And Palpatine is like, yeah, but now he's the leader of the droids. So the Senate is gonna vote to continue the war. So they walk off, and Anakin is kind of doing his like political small talk with some of the Senate, and we also get a little mini reunion between C-3PO and R2-D2, and R2-D2 is telling the tale of what happened, which I thought was just a little cute moment.
Yeah, I like how they catch up. We're seeing them become besties.
Yeah, and I also noticed C-3PO is especially shiny in this movie. He's looking good. So then Annie excuses himself from the small talk because he sees somebody behind them. And guess who it is? It's Padmé. And he runs off to hug her. And before they even start talking, I wrote, so are they not a secret anymore? Because this embrace is looking a little...
very public.
Intimate, yeah.
He literally walks away from the other guy. He's still like in the shot and he's already like hugging Padmé.
Yeah, and then he's like trying to kiss her and she's like, no, not now, not here. And he's like, I don't care if anybody knows that we're married. I want the world to know. And she's like, don't say that. Which I'm like, how are you acting like this when literally the Senate is 10 feet away from you? Potentially watching you necking with this guy.
No idea. But this is the moment where I said, okay, I believe their chemistry now. I think that it's so much more apparent that they love each other in this section. And I just sort of try to pretend that everything that happened in episode 2 didn't happen and then they were like this the whole time. And she was never like weird. That's what I like to do with this movie.
Well, that's interesting you say that because I wrote, I feel like Padmé is a completely different person in this movie.
Yes, exactly. She really feels like a totally different person.
Completely different character. It's so bizarre to see. It was almost hard for my brain to adjust. And I was thinking at first, like, did he do some sort of Jedi mind trick to make her love him or something?
No, I think she does love him. I think I have to believe that she loves him under her own free will. It's been 3 years. She's loving this whole living in secret. She loves the secret romance, you know. She's living for it.
Gross.
It's making her glow. Or maybe that's the pregnancy.
That's what we find out in basically the next line is he's like, what's wrong? You're trembling. And she's like, something amazing has happened, which she says with the saddest face ever.
I actually have to say, though, I do really appreciate these acting choices that were made because I think without all the complications, this is exciting news for them. But with the complications, there's sort of like an asterisk behind the exciting news. So I did like the fact that she said it kind of upset and he says it's wonderful, but also acknowledges the complication and the scary aspect around it.
Yeah, I could sense that he was almost trying to like convince her and himself like, no, we should still be happy. Yeah. This is a good thing. But believe me, I'm not happy.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not the best.
So meanwhile, we see Grievous landing back at the planet where he is operating out of, which I believe is called Mustafar.
Well, no, that's where he tells them to go.
Well, anyway, he gets to wherever planet he is, where his droid army is kind of waiting for for him, and he does a little FaceTime call with Lord Sidious, and Lord Sidious says it's time to move the separationist leaders to Mustafar.
Yeah.
Grievous gives him a little bit of like resistance because he's like, but what happened with Lord Dooku? And Sidious is like, Dooku's death was a necessary loss, and soon I'll have a new apprentice, someone younger and much more powerful. So at this point, I mean, I don't think it's a secret anymore that this is Palpatine.
I'm not sure either. I've been like avoiding this the whole time because I'm like, is it a secret? Because it's so obvious.
It's not even just that it's obvious, it's that it's his face too, talking.
So I've been unsure, but I guess at this point I can confirm that yes.
Yeah.
And also when he says like younger, more powerful, like who is he talking about? He's obviously talking about Anakin.
Yeah, obviously he's talking about Anakin. Yeah.
But this is why I mentioned earlier when Palpatine called Count Dooku a Sith Lord. Like he obviously knows that Dooku's not a Sith Lord. And I think in the eyes of the Jedi, they took down Darth Maul, they took down Count Dooku. So in their eyes, they took down the Lord and the Apprentice. But as a matter of fact, they didn't really take down either. Because as long as the Lord lives, a new apprentice can be crowned. And Palpatine's in full evil mode now.
Speaking of our future Sith apprentice, we cut back to Anakin and Padme. And I just want to make a little aside here because our lovely co-host Leah here has curly hair.
I knew you were going to say this.
I also naturally have curly hair, which you probably wouldn't know by looking at me because I do straighten it. But we do get Padme brushing her curls on the balcony. And I'm like, she's not brushing them.
No, you don't brush curls that way.
You do not brush curls like that. In fact, best to not brush them at all because that would just become a frizzy mess.
Her hair texture is literally exactly what my natural hair looks like. And I love it so much. My hair doesn't do that anymore though because I've bleached it to no end. But I love her hair.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I was just cackling during that moment because I was like, I know Leah knows.
No, you don't brush curly hair like that.
And I'm sure there are probably so many people who watch this movie and think nothing of it because why would they think anything different if they have naturally straight hair? Yeah, brushing your hair at night, that's normal. Nope, not for us.
No way.
So she's brushing her hair and she's talking about how she wants to have the baby back home at Naboo. And she's like, we can go back early and I can start setting up the baby's room. I have such a great idea, like by the garden, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, this is a different person.
Yeah, totally different. Because she was like a leader before and now we don't even like see her.
She's like a little simpering girl.
Yeah, exactly.
She seems so much younger.
Really? Well, I think she looks significantly older, but like in a mature way, not in like a, wow, she looks old way. I think that she looks very childlike in the first film and she feels like an adult here. But yeah, it just seems like her motivations are totally, totally different.
That's actually wild that you say that because I was thinking she looks so young here. She almost looks too young to be having a baby. And maybe I say that because...
Well, I think, yes, I agree. Because my like 31-year-old friends are having babies and I'm like, oh man, are you sure you're old enough?
They're so young.
We're two child-free people here. So for us, it's like wild to think that we'd ever have children.
We're bad judges of the timeline here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's hilarious. So she's talking about it and then Anakin is looking at her and he's like, you're so beautiful. And she's like, it's only because I'm so in love. And he's like, no, it's only because I'm so in love with you. Which honestly, if it was any other characters, I would think it's a cute moment.
But knowing what we
also
know.
Padme kind of ruined it because she was like, are you saying you're blinded by love? Dude, relax. He's just joking.
She's calling herself ugly.
Yeah, I get it. But it's like, this is not the time.
Listen, this is such an improvement from the last film.
No, I agree. I'm just annoyed because I don't like their relationship and I'm also a child-free person.
Yeah.
So the combination is lethal.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
So then we cut to Anakin having a dream. He hears a baby crying, Padme screaming, Anakin, help me. And it seems pretty obvious she is in labor in this dream.
Mm-hmm.
So he wakes up and he leaves the room and Padme wakes up. She sees him leaving and she follows him. And they go into this room, which, oh my goodness, what a view they have. Are they living wealthy or what?
Well, she is a senator.
True.
Former queen, current senator. And he's just like secretly there.
Dude, incredible room. Would love to stay there. But yeah, so Padme asks him what's wrong. He's like, nothing, everything's fine. And she's like, I thought we don't lie to each other anymore, or something like that. And then he tells her that he had a dream about her, like how he used to dream about his mother before she died. And then he finally confesses to her that he saw a vision that she's gonna die in childbirth. And Padme is like, and the baby? And he's like, I don't know. So that is probably terrifying for her to hear.
I do appreciate that he was honest with her, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And he also immediately goes into overprotective mode and he's like, we're not going to let it happen. And she's like, well, maybe somebody can help us. Maybe Obi can help us, which I thought was going to cut to Anakin asking Obi for help. But no, we actually cut to Anakin asking Yoda for help.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to point out another very cool shot in this scene where Anakin is talking. They're in this room, the same room that Yoda kind of chills in, I guess, in his room, which makes sense for him because there's like no furnishings or adornments or anything like that. And the blinds are drawn. And when we see Anakin in his close-up shot, everything is dark except for the light is hitting his eyes. And I thought it was pretty.
I liked it. I also like that he went to Yoda. I feel like in a way it makes sense he went to him because Yoda can also sort of sense the future. And I think Anakin is very certain that because the stuff with his mother came true, that this is going to come true as well. But obviously he has to be a little evasive when talking to Yoda because he can't say, my pregnant wife is gonna die.
Well, I think this scene was actually really awesome. And we got some quotes from Yoda that I absolutely loved. So basically, like you said, he has to be secretive about who he's talking about, but he just explains that he's having premonitions. And Yoda is like, be careful because the fear of death is a path to the dark side. And then Anakin is like, I can't let these premonitions come true. And Yoda says something really insightful. Makes me wish I had seen it a little bit earlier in life, which is that death is a part of life. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force. And then he also says, mourn them, do not. Miss them, do not.
I also think it was a cool, not really echo, obviously, because this happens later, but if we think to when Yoda does die and how kind of excited he was, and he said, I deserve this. I'm ready for this. And he accepted it in a really gracious way. And I think this whole speech kind of mirrors that as well.
Solidified that. Yeah, absolutely. I have to say, Yoda, probably the coolest character, objectively.
Wow, remember that meltdown you had?
His voice is still tough for me to overcome, but everything he says is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And he also warns Anakin that attachment leads to jealousy and that he needs to train himself to let go of what he fears to lose, which I thought reminded me a little bit.
Avatar.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. You know, I love my Avatar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wonder if Avatar, The Last Airbender, we're talking about, not the James Cameron Avatar.
But Aang didn't do it. Aang didn't let go of his love.
Aang didn't do it.
But he still succeeded.
And guess what? Anakin's not going to either.
No, he's not going to succeed.
Hey, spoiler. No, I'm just kidding.
We know.
So then meanwhile, we see Obi and he's in like a meeting room. Anakin walks in and Obi is like, you missed the meeting, but everything's good. And he says a couple of throwaway lines that I didn't think meant anything. They might mean something in the future. And this is probably why I never pick up names or planet names.
It was kind of important. He said that the Senate was going to vote to give Palpatine.
Oh no, that part.
Oh, okay, cool,
that part
cool.
I did write down.
All right, then you got it all.
Okay, no, he said something like, "Oh, this planet's good, this planet's good," and then Anakin is like, "Okay, but what's wrong though?" And then he says that the Senate wants to give more power to the Chancellor, and Anakin is like, "Isn't that a good thing? It'll be easier to end the war this way." And Obi says, "Be careful of your friend Palpatine. And by the way, he also requested your presence." And Anakin is like, "I don't see what the problem is." And Obi is like, "I just feel uneasy about this situation."
Yeah, Obi knows, and Obi's trying to warn Anakin away, but it may not work.
Yeah. Well, I think that Palpatine very easily got his hooks into Anakin. So it is going to be hard to pull him away. But I think Obi needs to be a little bit more upfront about how he feels.
Yeah, for sure. Like, he needs to remember the fear he had back when Qui-Gon wanted to make this kid a Jedi in the first place. It's like he's completely forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we get a little meeting with Anakin and Palpatine. And Palpatine is like, "I hope you trust me." And Anakin is like, "Of course I do." And he says, I need your help, son, which I just always feel like in movies or really any situation, when somebody calls someone son, especially somebody who does not have a father, I think it's a little manipulative.
I agree. I think it is as well.
So then he says he needs him to be the eyes, ears, and voice of the Republic because he wants to appoint Anakin to be his representative on the Jedi Council, which would mean that he would have to be a Jedi Master. And Anakin says he's very overwhelmed, and he says that the Council elects its own members, and they're not going to accept this. And Palpatine is like, oh, but they will. They need you more than they know,
Oy.
which is very ominous. And that is how we ended this section.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. I think Palpatine at this point is just very outwardly evil.
Oof,
no hiding it.
scary.
Is there even going to be a reveal? I mean, at this point, it's just like, yeah, Palpatine's evil.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. I mean, I think you clocked it in the first movie where they said, I think it was when they said the line, wherever there's a Sith, there's always two. There's a Sith apprentice and a Sith Lord. And the very next shot was a shot of Palpatine. And you said something and I was like, interesting. Anyway, so the next scene, and I just kind of like moved on. But I felt like that was a reveal. That was it.
To be fair, I think I said it before that, but you weren't, listening to my suspicions because it was probably a little too early to be guessing. But I was just thinking like this Sith Lord has the same jaw and bottom face.
Yeah, and his face I feel like is so recognizable. He's got a big old dimple in the middle of his chin.
I mean, at this point in this movie, he's so obviously evil, but in the beginning of the movie, when he's telling Anakin to kill Count Dooku, and he's like, do it. I feel like the do it thing is a very Sith Lord thing, because of the Kermit meme.
Oh yeah, that's the Kermit meme, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, this is all very obvious.
So with this film, it's interesting because obviously we know the fate of Obi-Wan, we know the fate of Yoda, we know the fate of the Emperor, but there are a few characters here and there. There's Windu, there's Padmé. Padmé has this now premonition from Anakin that she's gonna die. Like, what do you think are gonna be sort of like the fates of all these other outlying characters that we don't know what happens to them?
Well, I am glad you asked because I feel like I already know what's going to happen to all of them.
Tell me.
Well, I do think that Padmé is going to die in childbirth, but maybe it's going to be during the birth of the second baby because he is only aware of one right now. And I think he's going to like run off and do his revenge, becoming a Sith bad guy, going to the dark side type of thing. And he's not going to realize that another baby is born and he's going to run off and be evil.
Yeah.
So that's an easy
Good
one.
prediction.
Windu, I just thought he might die of natural causes.
Natural causes in his old age in the countryside.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. He deserves it.
Well, we'll see. I hope so.
Is there anybody else I should predict on?
I'm not sure.
I didn't think that everybody was going to have a terrible death. I thought some people were just going to, get old, die.
Yeah, that's true. But, we do know that a power shift happens from this film till the next film, which I also looked this up, is a 19-year gap between the end of this film and the start of the next one.
But I think we're also setting it up because isn't the Empire the bad guys in the original trilogy? And Palpatine is for sure keeps getting more power, so he's just going to become the Emperor.
Right. So there's going to be that power shift where the Republic gets taken down and the Empire rises.
Yeah. Ooh, sounds like a movie name.
The Empire Strikes Back.
The comeuppance of the Empire. But no, I'm excited about it. I'm excited to finish this trilogy off and then see what happens, I guess, in the future.
The newest trilogy, 7, 8, 9, is definitely not a terribly popular one, but I think it has its moments, and I'm very excited for it.
I'm very excited too. So we will see you next week where we'll pick up on part 2 of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Hands.
A lot of hands being cut off here. I'm predicting at least 4 more.
4 more. Okay. You heard it here first.
No. I take it back.
Okay.
Maybe 1 more because it always happens. There's going to be a big lightsaber battle at the end. That'll be like part 3 of our podcast.
Yeah, and someone will lose a hand.
Maybe it'll be a coughing droid guy, General Grievous.
Yeah, possible. Does that count a droid hand? I guess it does.
If it's a main character droid hand, then yes.
Because actually, now we know that Anakin has that fake arm, which is a call forward to episode 6. He does get that fake arm cut off.
And that counted too.
It did count. We did count it.
All right, we'll see you next week.
See you next week. You've been listening to the It's All Geek to Me podcast, hosted by Leah and Kelly. Make sure to hit subscribe in your favorite podcast player and give us a rating. You can also follow us on Twitter at All Geek Podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday. See you next week.